Pranam, Jai Jinendra. Welcome everybody to this class on Nav Tatva. They start with the prayers as usual. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarusura Surendra Mahito Virambuda Sansrita Virena Bhiyata Swakarmani Chayo Vira Nityam Nama Vira Tirthamidam Prautamatulam Vira Shikho Ramtapo Vire Sri Druti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Virabhadram Disa Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Soshitam Karma Kurvati Prabhustulya Manovrutti Parshanath Sri Estu Vaha अंगूठे अमृत वसे लपति तणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. Continuing on our topic on Nav Tatva, we were discussing time, Kal, last week. Before that, we focused on Udgal as a Dravya. And before that, we were talking about the nature of Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai, and Akash. And before that, we started off with understanding the nature of Jeev. What we have covered so far is laying the groundwork for further discussions on the association between Jeev and Ajeev and how Jeev is affected by Ajeev and what the consequences of that are. Today, we will focus on mainly one particular question as to why should we study Ajeev. This was a relevant question asked by Hasmukh Bhai a couple of weeks ago. And I think it's important for us to explore this further, because in exploring this particular question, we will be able to hopefully convince ourselves and look at the deeper aspects of why the study of Ajeev is important, and why getting that understanding clear in our minds and in our hearts helps the progress of the soul. As we go along, we will repeatedly come back to some of these questions. And I was talking with one of the members of our class yesterday, and she mentioned that the understanding comes slowly and it begins to emerge as we repeatedly try and understand the different aspects of this difficult topic. And I think this is true for all of us, because on a daily basis, we are not living the lessons of what Nav Tatva and Jain Dharma is teaching us. And to really grasp the essential elements of it, and to a level where it begins to affect what we think, what we feel, and the state of our soul, we need to keep on repeating it and understand it again and again. So I hope none of you are finding the repetition difficult. Today I'm not going to repeat everything and I've got new slides today, which will start off with where we ended last week. Before I move on and share my slides, there are only about 4 or 5 slides. I told you last week that we would start off with Punya Tattva, but this week I'm laying the groundwork for that, and I will just introduce the topic of Punya. And from next week onwards, we will concentrate a bit more on that. Before I start, does anybody have any questions that have been brewing in your mind from last week or weeks before? Anybody?
There doesn't seem to be anybody. Ajitbhai.
Okay. Do I take it that you're all on the same page then, that you have all understood and come to a basic level of understanding of Jeev, Ajeev, and are happy to progress on to the next 7 tattvas? Or does it mean that you're still confused and don't know what particular questions may be relevant? When I was in college, many of our teachers used to ask us and tell us that if there are no questions, that means everybody has understood everything that has been taught, or nobody has understood anything that has been taught.
Rashmita has raised her
Yes,
hand.
yes, I've seen that. Okay, Rashmita, just feel free to switch on your video and ask your question, or at least your audio. Go on, Rashmita.
Ajitbhai, good evening.
Good evening. Yeah.
You mentioned Lokakash has the various beings in there, and it's shaped like a man
Mm-hmm.
standing with his feet wide apart, hands outwards.
Mm-hmm.
Has Lokakash got nothing in it at all?
Alokakash has nothing in it at all.
So it's emptiness totally.
It's total emptiness. Yes.
Okay, that's where I was got misunderstanding.
Yeah, just space. And that is why, because the elements of Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai do not exist, nothing can move within Alokakash, nothing can survive, nothing can actually exist there. So nothing moves out of Lokakash into Alokakash.
Okay, thank you very much.
And there's nothing in Alokakash to move back. And the barrier, if we go deeper into the structure of the universe as described in Jain texts, it says that the whole of the Lokakash is covered by an envelope of Vayu, a kind of different forms of air, which forms a layer around all around it, and there is descriptions of that, but we won't be going into the details of that at some stage. But maybe you can share some elements of that. If you are interested in learning, then I can share some books that you may want to learn from.
As long as they're in English, because I can't read Gujarati.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult topic, but it's something that some of you may be very interested in. So we can come to that in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Okay. Anybody else? Anila, you got a question? No? Okay. Shall we move on? All right. Let me share my slides. So this was the big question. Why is it important to study the nature of a jeev? And this question, exactly in this form, is discussed in the Nav Tatva Prakaran. That's the text that has been used for many, many years. Originally published by Vijayji Jain Sanskrit Pathsala. So a lot of Pandits, when they study Nav Tattva as part of their education, follow this book. And moving forward from where we ended last week, it begins to ask this particular question before it moves forward. So we are following the same format. Two questions. Why is it important to study the nature of a jeev? Are we interested in this only for gaining information? I think we covered these questions last week or week before, but let's go a bit deeper into it. How does this knowledge of a jeev, particularly Pudgal, help the soul to realize itself? So to answer that question, we need to begin to understand what obstructs the soul's spiritual progress. So what are the different things or different elements that make it difficult for us to move forward spiritually and progress? So the obvious thing is ignorance, wrong belief, mithyatva, confusion about the nature of self. And this is something that we have all struggled through in many, many, many lives before. And it's possible that we will struggle through this particular question, the ignorance of our true nature, for a long time to come in the future. And it's important to understand that when we talk about ignorance, it's not just on a level of superficial learning. Real learning and real gnan or education or the real gnan comes from deep within the soul. It's the awakening, the awareness. So if verbally and through a state of uh, being able to explain what true knowledge is, one is able to say the right words, does not necessarily mean the knowledge has actually entered the level of consciousness. Does that statement actually resonate with some of you? If I say everything that we've been learning, we've been teaching, that the soul is separate from the body, that when we leave this body, the soul will go somewhere else to occupy another body, that everything that we have in our lives is not part of us. Saying that and repeating that repeatedly, does that mean that we actually feel that and act by it all the time?
No.
No. Good. So when we talk about knowledge, we are talking about this particular understanding sinking in to a level where your total waking, sleep moments, you are constantly aware, and that is a state of significantly high spiritual awareness, spiritual development. And this is what a lot of sadhaks, a lot of uh, all the sadhu bhagwans and everybody is striving very hard to reach. So the state of Atmagnan, the state of self-awareness, is a very high spiritual goal, and it is not something that is achieved very easily. It requires a lifestyle, lifelong practice, and it may require several lifetimes of work before we get to that stage. Okay. Temptation. We all suffer from that. Attraction towards that which is not of the soul, namely Pudgal. What are the things that we actually are tempted by? We are tempted by, so the association, temptation is one thing, giving in to the temptation and then associating and identifying the various dravyas, the elements that have and continue to do so, contaminated and caused the fall of the soul, namely the 8 karmas, the 5 senses, the body, the mind, material wealth, relationships, family, community, etc. All these elements that we live our life in are actually not part of the soul. They are outside, And that is so, you may have heard the term in, say, Sanatana Dharma text, people saying that all this is Maya. What Maya actually means is that it is an illusion, it is not real, it does not relate to you. So, not to say that it is completely imaginative, that it does exist, but because it is temporary, because it is ever changing, you are attaching yourself to something that is not going to be there, is almost like you're attaching yourself to something imaginary. And in some ways, it's like uh, a deer running around in a forest searching for water when in the distance it sees a mirage which appears as if there is a lake of water, full of water, shining out in the distance, and he runs towards it. And the nearer he gets, the further that particular mirage of water seems to go. So, in that respect, a lot of things we are seeking fulfillment, happiness, and are constantly striving towards that. But all of that we strive for is temporary and will never actually achieve what we are looking for. We may have temporary goals satisfied, temporary goals achieved, but then again, another goal creeps up, and what we achieved may disappear, and the cycle starts again. So the dravyas that have and continue to do so contaminate and cause the fall of the soul, namely the 8 karmas, the 5 senses, the body, the mind, material wealth, relationships, family, community, etc., are all pudgal. The enlightened soul therefore contemplates these things. So this is where the knowledge of Ajiv is important. When this understanding sinks into us, then the soul will begin to think, I am Jeev, I am alive, Pudgal is a Jeev, meaning not alive. The manifestations of Pudgal, all that we've just mentioned, are temporary and destructible, meaning they are anitya. I am indestructible, pardon the spelling mistake, in my pure state. Obviously, in our association with the body, we are destructible, and the body, we will leave the body at some stage, and everything else that we have with us, all the material wealth, etc., is all temporary. Pudgal Dravya is ignorant. It does not have the quality of self-awareness and any knowledge at all. In my pure state, I am omniscient, meaning I know everything, I have total knowledge. And it's only us, the soul, the Jeev, that has this self-awareness, and because it is sentient. The soul asks itself this question: why should I have any association with Pudgal? Is that a reasonable question to ask? We know we have this association. We know we are living a life where we are surrounded by our possessions, our attachments, our relationships. But is that a relevant question? Why should I have any association with Pudgal? Should we be asking ourselves that question on a daily basis or throughout the day, not just once? Should we be aware of that constantly? Bijal? Go on, Bijal.
Pranam Ajitbhai.
Pranam.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Sure, we
so,
all can.
So I guess to start, the closest thing for our soul is our body, which is also Budgal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which is our first attachment.
Mm-hmm.
We all have to different degrees more with our body, and then all the other Budgals, like you said, everything we possess,
Mm-hmm.
whether things or relations or whatever. So I guess none of it, in theory, should be something that we are attached to, but we are very much attached to all of them.
Yep, absolutely.
And we should be thinking about it every day, but I'm not sure practically how much it happens. And is that the way to detachment?
Yes, and constantly asking ourselves, because a lot of this takes time to sink in. A lot of this requires constant practice. I don't know if you attended last Wednesday's class, but there was an example there which I have recently heard about. Param Pujya Bhakti Yogacharya Yashovijiji in a recent uh, Vachna Pravachan was mentioning, he gave in incidents of a particular sadhak that he had gone to meet, having heard that this particular sadhak, so by sadhak you mean, one means a spiritual practitioner who is trying very hard to gain self-awareness. And the way this particular sadhak had adopted to achieve this state, probably following some guidance from Guru Bhagwans, and himself being that much self-aware, he had decided to isolate himself, to practice total maun, meaning not talking with anybody, and living on his own. And from, if my recollection is correct, he'd been doing that for about 30 years. By when Param Pujya Bhakti Yogacharya Shuvijayji actually went down to see him. So he was nearby where this particular sadhak was practicing, and he had heard about him. So he said, it's not far from where I am in their vihar, and said, I'll go and see him. He was aware that it may take a long time. So when he went there, he had gone there prepared for one to stay there for as long as it was necessary. The person who was around the particular dwelling, so it is probably a small house or a room somewhere which was locked from the locked from inside, and this particular person who was more or less performing some kind of caretaking, guarding duties, said to the Acharya Maharaj that he wanted to meet him. Yes, he does meet people, but he is obviously in complete silence. He doesn't communicate with words. So if you want to see him, if he's not in meditation, if you slip a piece of paper with your desire to meet him, he will open the door. But if he's in meditation, then you may wait here for several hours or the whole day, and unless he breaks the meditation, he will not see the slip of paper and not concentrate on that. And he says his daily routine is being completely quiet, silent, and he only opens the door twice a day. or unless somebody else comes, twice a day to take a glass of milk that I leave outside in the morning and again in the late afternoon. He drinks that, and then the door closes again and he is in meditation the rest of the time. So fortunately, he says on that day when I put the slip of paper, he was apparently not in meditation, and he opened the door and he sat down in front of him, learning from what he saw with his own eyes, and says, this is a person with a high level of spiritual awareness. And the communication that happened by virtue of signs and different kinds of actions, the conclusion was that this person had advanced very far, but the question that was being asked was that, have you actually achieved that level of self-awareness? And this person says that with God's grace, hopefully in the near future, I can feel that I'm getting there, but I am not there yet. And that was the end of the story there. So what Puja Bhakti Yogacharya Shuididi is trying to explain here is that this level of sadhana and awareness requires dedication, and it's a long time. So that doesn't mean that it's a lost cause for all of us here. It is something to be aware and something to retain within our psyche on a daily basis and repeat what we are. So why should I have any association with Pudgal? Who am I? Why should I attach myself with Pudgal? Also, why should I allow the Ajiv Dravya, karma, to control me and to make me dance like a mad monkey? Because I am completely dependent on karma. I'm completely controlled by karma. Why should I allow Ajiv, Dravya, karma to actually control me? Because I'm much more powerful. I, who have infinite power, Anant Virya, and I have the potential to be the greatest in the universe. So Tirthankar Paramatma, Siddha Paramatmas are the greatest in the universe. And every soul has got infinite power, Anant Virya, is being controlled. So why in this state are we being controlled by Ajiv? And how sad is this? So making ourselves aware of this and gradually beginning to understand and realize the enormity of our loss, the enormity of where we are, the enormity of our slavery to things that are of no real value. So what we revel in, we get very happy if we have won something. We are very happy if we get some prize, present, financial gain. We get very happy if our wishes of material achievement, health, etc. are achieved. So the real problem actually arises in the times of happiness. So if everything is running perfectly okay, and even in those times you retain this awareness that none of this is actually of importance, that is where real progress starts. It is fairly easy to maintain a level of detachment when nothing is going right. When we are riddled with a problem physically, when we've got a lot of pain or suffering from a disease of some kind, or we've got some major worries in our lives, it is easier to detach ourselves from the various things that surround us and say, look, none of this is actually very important. So I shouldn't be grieving so much about my difficulties and what I'm losing or what I've already lost. But when everything is fine And then you realize that none of this is of importance. Now, according to Jain Ramayana, just one particular story that I think is relevant. I think we've got some time. So let me go into this. Hopefully, you will appreciate the story. It's from Jain Ramayana. There is a particular incident according to the Trisasti Shalaka Purusharitra and the nature of things within the relationship between Baldev and Vasudev. So in this instance, the Baldev is Ram, Vasudev is Lakshman, and the love of the two brothers is extremely powerful and exemplary. There was a time before when everything was perfect after this battle with Ravan and the return to Ayodhya and the establishment of Ram Rajya. Everything was going perfectly, and somebody gave Ramchandraji the news that somebody has taken Diksha, has left everything of this world and become a monk. And Ramchandraji finds it difficult to understand. He says, when life is so wonderful, why would somebody want to actually give this up? He says, my life is so nice. I've got everything, and I've got the greatest love that I feel, my connection with my brother Lakshman, and it is so rich that I cannot imagine giving any of this up or abandoning this. Why would anybody want to abandon a sansar when life is so wonderful? Sometime later, according to Jain Ramayana, Lakshman dies suddenly. And because the attachment between the two brothers is so tight and such a strong emotional attachment, Ram completely refuses to believe that Lakshman has died. And he spends months with Lakshman's body on his shoulders, trying to coax him to wake up, trying to coax him to eat, trying to feed him, and he completely refuses to accept the fact that Lakshman has died until one day, and it was obviously distressing to everybody around in Ayodhya, all the loved ones around Ramchandraji, and one day decides to make Ram aware, and he creates a scene which slowly enables Ram to understand the reality of what he was doing. Then he develops Vairagya. And the way that this particular incident in Jain Ramayana is quoted is that somebody who, like Ramchandraji, who went to moksha in that life, has also passed through a stage like this where he finds it very, very difficult to understand the fruitlessness or the illusionary nature of sansaric sukh. There's somebody who was actually destined to go to moksha in that life, and Ramchandraji later on becomes a monk, and then with great sadhana, he actually goes to, he achieves nirvana. But even somebody who has is become so well spiritually aware from previous lives finds it difficult to discard these attachments. It can be very, very difficult for us, and it requires constant vigilance, awareness, and practice. So why should I have any association with Pudgal? Why should I allow Ajiv Dravya to control me and to make me dance like a mad monkey? I, who have infinite power and have the potential to be the greatest in the universe, is being controlled by this Ajiv. So how sad this is. And if you read this particular story about Ramchandraji in Trisasya Shalaka, Purush Charitra, the way Acharya M. Chandraji describes it, I mean, it's a very moving story there, some very beautiful words there. Maybe if you, those of you who read Gujarati, I don't know how well it comes out in the English translation, but the Gujarati version is beautiful. Okay, I hope that that helped. Laying the groundwork for our discussion about Punya, which we will start properly next week. Let us understand a bit more about karma. And I'm going to stop sharing my slides here now. Okay. You're just going to be trying to understand. Please feel free to switch on your videos and ask any questions on what I'm going to be saying now, but when we end, you can ask questions on anything. We have learned that karma is a kind of pudgal. It is a very, very sukshma, very fine, densely packed matter. As far as matter is concerned, that karma so the pudgal which has the potential to actually attach to the soul is called karma pudgal, but it only has any power or the ability to exert its influence on the soul when it gets attached to the soul. So what we are talking about is the karma pudgal that gets attached to the soul, and the way it's described is that it mixes up with the soul in the same way as, say, if you pour water in a jug of milk, then the water and the milk actually are there together. They can be very difficult to separate out, but they are still separate. So the water does not become milk, the milk does not become water. So in the same way, the association of the soul and karma as a result of various elements that attract karma and form and make it possible for the karma pudgal to actually attach to the soul. That particular activity for the soul is constant. It is always going on, except for the souls which are in moksha. So the Siddha Bhagwans, there is no reason for them to attract and for them to bind any karmas. But for the rest of us, for the whole, all the sansari jeeves, that process goes on all the time. What are the reasons why karmas pudgal, karma pudgal. So I'll distinguish the two by using karma pudgal as the matter and karma as the matter that has then that karma matter that has then attached to the soul as two different entities, though it's not called karma as such until it gets attached to the soul, because karma pudgal is present throughout the universe, wherever, even where the Siddh Bhagwants are, karma pudgal is present. But that does not have any effect because the soul is completely detached from karma. For us, where we are sitting throughout everywhere, the space around us is jam-packed with the pudgal that has the potential to form karmas. And with every activity that we are doing, those pudgals are attracted and then attached to the soul depending on what that activity is, what our associated emotions are, what our belief system is. And according to the various levels of all these elements, the karma gets attached. And the rules of what happens when the karma gets attached, the nature of the karma, etc., are something that we will discuss in brief as we go along. The main topic of this discussion is not karma, but in the way it actually impacts on all our discussions, we will study some brief aspects of it. So what are the reasons? So for karma pudgal to attach to the soul, they're described as 5 different reasons: mithyatva, avirti, kasai, pramad, and yog. Pramad could be considered as part of kashai. So in some texts you may see mithyatva, avirti, kashai, and yog. Yog is the activity of the mind, body, and speech. Mithyatva is wrongly held belief or misunderstanding, or the state that we have been describing today, where our awareness of our true nature, our awareness of the right gods, the right teachers, the right dharma, and our unawareness of all those things and our wrong beliefs, that is mithyatva. Avirti is that our total lack of restriction in our association with the outside world. So avirti would be described as the absence of any kind of vows or determination that from now on, these are the things that I'm not going to do. So in other aspects, virti would be described as either desvirti or sarvavirti. Desvirti would be when one takes a vow of a householder. The vows of a householder, anything from 1 to 12 or all 12 of them, then you have entered the particular space where you are virtidhar. So you got desvirti. Sarvavirti is when you leave your household completely, you become a monk, you become a nirgranth muni. That is called sarvavirti. Kashai is krodh, man, maya, lobh, all those imposters that trouble us. And pramad means being unaware of ourselves, again related to kashai and mithyatva. So mithyatva, avirti, kashai, pramad, and yog are the 5 reasons why karma pudgal gets attached to the soul to then in the future, or if it is very powerful, within a short time of its formation show its effect and trouble the soul in different ways. So how does it trouble the soul? There are 8 major types of karma, and the types of karma are described in such a way as each one of them obstructs a major virtue of the soul. So to understand the 8 karmas, we should understand what are the virtues of the soul. So when we say the virtues of Siddh Bhagwans, so it says Aryan Paramatma has got 12 guns, Siddh Paramatma has got 8 guns. So every soul which is in moksha has got 8 basic virtues, though there are infinite number of other virtues, but 8 basic virtues are Keval Gnan, so Sampurna Gnan, the karmas which obstruct the ability of knowledge of the soul is called Gnana Varniya Karma. Similarly, Darshana Varniya Karma, Vedaniya Karma, Mohniya Karma, Ayushya Karma, Nam Karma, Gotra Karma, and Antray Karma. These are the major categories of karma. They are then further subdivided into 5 types of Gnana Varniya Karma, etc. And the total number of categories of these 8 karmas is 158. Nam karma has got the greatest number of categories, and we'll come to some details of this as we go along. I won't go into more depth about this now, but this is just to lay the foundation for discussing punya and pap. Punya is good karma, pap is bad karma. And we'll start off with the understanding of punya karma next week. Any questions?
There is a question from Nick. Can you please explain Pramad and Yog?
Yoga is the activity of the mind, body, and speech. Pramad is described as unawareness, is described as Madhya, Vishay, Kashai, Nidra, and Vikatha, meaning our engagement in things which are not of any value or importance to the soul. So if we want to be rid of karmas, and if we want to stop acquiring new karmas, then constant awareness of the soul and of ourselves and understanding that anything that or everything that we do which has no relationship or value to the soul will attract bad karmas or karmas that will have its effect. So karmas can be good or bad, but for example, one of the things that is mentioned here as part of pramad is vikatha. Vikatha means talking about things or focusing on things that are of no real importance. The vikathas are rajkatha, meaning discussion about politics. So as far as the soul is concerned, in terms of our discussion on things that are happening outside, has no real value in the soul's progress. So Rajkatha, Bhakt Katha, when you're constantly talking about food, the ways to make food, I mean, one needs that and one would engage and learn about that, but having discussions about that, having chat groups or having detailed discussion about that with a deep interest on that is also something that is Vikatha, Raj Katha, Bhakt Katha, Des Katha. Des Katha meaning the state of the land that we are living in, etc., etc. Now, as householders, we need to be aware of all this, but spending a long time in getting very emotionally engaged with a lot of these discussions is pramad. Des Katha and Stri Katha. Stri Katha is basically, it applies to men and women, meaning discussing things that are to do with our interest in the opposite sex or any kind of sexual behaviors. And all those kinds of discussions are called Vikatha. Kasai, we understand, Krodh, Man, Maya, Lobh. Nidra is Pramad. So if you look at the life of Bhagwan Mahavir in those 12.5 years of his sadhana, the time that he actually slept is extremely brief. So there are times when he has actually never in those 12.5 years lain down to sleep. Most of his time was spent in meditation, standing, and there may have been moments when he dozed off for a brief moment when that could be described as a very brief period of sleep. So all those things are part of pramad. Yoga is simple to understand, any activity of the mind, talking, speech, and the body attracts karmas. Okay? So these are the reasons why karmas are bound. There's some other question here. Let me just see. Nick, hopefully that answers your question. Does it, Nick?
Pranam.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, it does answer a question very well, especially Pramad.
Yeah.
The question with yoga, you did explain it. I understood what you explained. But what my following on from that, yoga is kriya.
Yoga is
Enabling
kriya.
me to do kriya.
Yeah.
And which would then mean that I'm going to create karma.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, go on. You were going to say something?
So you see, stillness is a virtue. Being completely, so the value of meditation in emptying your mind and clearing it out of everything allows the soul's power and awareness to emerge. So our minds are full of thoughts of various different things. And that constant activity of the mind is yoga. So mano yoga, vachan yoga, speaking. So when I recited this example of this sadhak who has taken maun, in many ways that is a way of restricting your activity. I will not speak. And there are people who do maun upvas and some people who have done maun athais. So that is of value. And Kaya Yoga, meaning if you are sitting in meditation, you're sitting still. So any kind of activity attracts karmas But however, what kind of karmas and how tightly that bind depends on the type of activity that goes on in the mind, the speech, and the body. So while we are developing, we are progressing spiritually, good activities are essential because they will allow punya karma to be created and bound to the soul that in the future will give us a better environment to then further our spiritual progress. But at a certain level, when we've reached that far, both punya and pap are karmas. Ultimately, the soul's emancipation depends on getting rid of all the karmas. And ultimately, if you look at the development of the soul, the 14 gunasthans, you reach the stage when there is total absence of all yoga, ayogi kevali, gunasthan, meaning you have restricted the activity of the mind, of the speech and the body, and then ultimately completely restricted the activity of the mind. So the fact that karmas are formed is one question, but the issue is that we've engaged in an activity going on for an hour plus now. Our minds are occupied with this. Hopefully, the state of our soul is good, and that is hopefully attracting good karmas, but also getting rid of some bad karmas. So, in addition to maybe forming good karmas, we are probably getting rid of some bad karmas as well. So, all those activities are going on constantly. So, I think what you were trying to explain or to understand, Nick, was whether any kind of activity is bad. To begin with, activity is essential, but what we are doing is withdrawing from bad that which causes harm and substituting that with good that causes benefit to the soul and ultimately with the aim of progressing. So that's why sadhaks spend years, days standing in meditation, and we've seen that in the life of Bhagwan Mahavir. Asmak Bhai?
Pranam Sarvi, Ajitbhai.
Yeah.
Yeah, the I just wanted to share something first.
Yeah.
I read in the week somewhere, I
Mhm.
think, when Sadhu Maharaj was giving a Vyakhyan,
Mhm.
and he went to where Vyakhyan to the fisherman,
Mhm.
and the talk was on the number of jiv in one drop of water.
Mhm.
Now, one particular fisherman, it had such an impact on him
Mhm.
that he actually got him thinking, saying that if one drop of water has so much jiv,
Mhm.
he's spending his whole life in water because he's a fisherman.
Mhm.
He took, that was the turning point for him.
Mhm.
He took Diksha.
Mhm.
Apparently, he's still there. I think his name is Munishri Raj Tilak Vijay Maharaj Sahib. He's aged 102 and he's still doing good aradhana.
Mhm.
But also what he's done is he has given that knowledge to so many other fishermen as well. So it's like just talking about one drop of water
Mhm.
and how the impact can be.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share
Good.
that.
Yeah, so that's very useful. Thank you. I had not heard of that. Raj Tilak is a name that I've heard, but I'm not sure.
I got confused initially when I heard Raj Tilak. I thought because he Kardharam Panigas, he's no more because he was in Ramchandra Suri Maharaj Samudai.
Okay.
And when Ramchandra Suri Maharaj Sahib passed away, it was Raj Tilak Suri Maharaj Sahib and Mahoday Suri Maharaj Sahib. They were the two joint Gachatipatis, but they've both gone. So this one is still a Muni, and I of course, I'll try to find out more about him because it's so interesting that without a Jain background, he was a fisherman, and the impact it had on him, and the turning point that came round.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
So that was that. The other thing that I wanted to ask you was it actually came up in the book club a couple of weeks ago that we only have a finite. I mean, I know this, we have this Ananta above and all their lives, but the human, we only have a very finite human life in which we can get moksha. So I think it's only about half a dozen. I don't know if you can explain that or if you can tell us that. So we have a very, very, very small chance. Although Bhau Brahman is going to be so much, there is like infinite lives, but the Manushya Bhav in which we can get moksha is very limited.
So things that are very durlabh, meaning those which are extremely difficult in universal terms, as far as the soul's progress is concerned, there are a few things which are extremely difficult to actually get. To begin with, the most difficult is getting birth as a human being. And our Shastras describe how difficult that is, and it compares that with about 10 different, almost impossible things that can happen. So in terms of, so I use the term that winning a lottery, as far as the soul is concerned, getting out of Nigod is a lottery, getting Samyaktva is a lottery, but getting a human birth is a huge lottery as well. So, and it's described as thus drastante durlabh manushya bhav. So 10 different, almost impossible situations. If we can actually get that, then we get a human life. So this is in universal terms. The other difficulty is being born in a household where you have some exposure to dharma or Jain dharma. We've all got that. But more difficult than that is having an interest and a desire to actually find out more. And having the desire to actually then make an effort to find out more. So having a desire may not be enough. So people may feel interested, there's something to learn here, but we find that a lot of people would avoid attending any kind of classes or lectures or even listening to Guru Bhagwans, and that just doesn't interest them. So all of us have gone that far. So in many ways, we have got to a stage and achieved a lot of things which are extremely durlabh. So, and I suspect what you are trying to, what you discussed in the book club is probably related to this. So becoming a human being is rare and extremely difficult, extremely rare, extremely difficult. But then the next stages of that to help us progress spiritually are having the exposure, having the necessary background, having the connections that expose you, and then you have an interest in those, and then you have the desire to follow those interests to any significant degree. And for a lot of us, then to implement them to any meaningful level is again extremely difficult. So when we listen to a lot of our Sadhu Bhagwans, Muni Bhagwans, and our Shastras say the soul has spent many lifetimes having become a human being, having got Jain Dharma, having been to Samvasran to listen to Tirthankar Paramatmas, having become monks. So I'm sure many of us have become and been monks. There are many others who have been monks and have got lost. So we look at Bhagwan Mahavir's life, when there were times that he, after having been in his initial lives, having acquired Samyaktva, he lost that and became a three-dandi in life after life as a Brahmin. So he didn't actually get to the level of the right dharma, and then he spent many, many lifetimes in subhuman life forms. So again, thing is that having even become monks in many lives in the past, we are still floundering, and a lot of our Guru Bhagwans actually explore the reasons for that. And one of the fundamental reasons is that we have done all this from an external point of view and have failed to internalize and grasp the essentials and incorporate them. And that is where the rarity, so even though these are very, very rare things, it is also very likely that we have been fortunate enough to get these rare things many times in the past. But we are still floundering because we have not made that jump and made the effort to push the boundaries.
Yeah, I I thought it was a little bit more specific. What was mentioned was a little more specific. I thought understood that was we will only have 4 or 5 opportunities to go to moksha, no more. If we don't do it in those 4 or 5 opportunities,
That is not my understanding.
is it something in the bar bhavana or something? Something. I mean, I just thought I'll raise it. I will. I mean, I've obviously my curiosity has been aroused because it's even more like it emphasizes that how important it is for us to get on this path as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
If we are only going to have four, I mean, 5 or 6, I don't know if it was, even if it was 4, but they said only on those 4 or 5 births, that's the only time we can go to moksha. Otherwise, we won't have chance ever again.
I don't think that you see, and I'm not sure where it relates to, but I understand the question now. And do you remember which particular bhavana it was related?
I don't know the bhavanas completely, but I think I vaguely remember Anitya bhavana was mentioned, I think.
Okay, and who was taking the class?
I think it was Mukul Pai.
Okay, I'll have a chat with him. And
he did go to as best as he explained, but he said he wasn't completely sure because I can't remember the name who raised that question, but he said that he explained it. He agreed that her understanding was correct. We only have very limited opportunities, and it was, I think he mentioned Anitya Bhavana, but he said he would have to check to confirm it or something.
So I'll have a chat with him and I'll find out and I'll try and enlighten you next week. But it is quite likely that we've been on this journey for a very, very long time and that we have been human beings for many times in the past. But our opportunity, you see, if you go through some of the stories that I described and how people have got lost and how their progress then subsequently develops. For example, if you just going back to Bhagwan Mahavir's life, if you look at what starts off the progress of Goshalak after he has done this great atrocity of throwing Tejolesha at Bhagwan Mahavir and burning the Muni Bhagwans who stepped forward to protect Bhagwan Mahavir and succumbed to the Tejolesha and then subsequently died. And after the Tejolesha comes back to Goshalak's body, burns him, and he is then lying on his deathbed, and for the few days that he survives after that particular incident when his whole body is actually burning from inside, he realizes the atrocious and extremely bad thing that he has done and begins to change his psyche. And as a result of that improvement in his mental and spiritual state, his next life is that of actually a Dev. But then there is a description about what happens to him subsequently, because all these atrocious things that he has done obviously come back to roost, and the life after life after life that he will spend in the future and suffer the consequences of all the bad karmas that is acquired. And when after an extremely long time his emancipation begins to occur, is described in brief, I think, in Trisasya Shalaka Purush Charitra. Similarly, there is the incidence of in Samraditya Kevali Charitra, when the association between Gun Sen and Agni Sharma over 8 major lives, and when in the final life Gun Sen's Jeev, which is then becomes Samraditya Kevali, and somebody who survives an attempt by Agni Sharma's Jeev to burn the monk who was Samraditya alive, fails, and he achieves Keval Gnan at that point, and people, he sits on a kamal that has been created by the Devs and gives a sermon, and somebody asks him who was that person who actually was trying to burn a completely harmless and a great saint like you, Muni Bhagwant. Why was he trying to do that? And then he describes their association over a long period of time, their 8 major lives. And then he describes that while he had set fire and my body was beginning to burn, Agni Sharma's Jeev had a thought in his mind: why am I doing this? Why am I actually completely senselessly trying to burn a monk? What is it that has taken hold of me? What has occupied my psyche, my this madness, that I am filled with hatred for a person that I completely unknown to me. He does not remember any of his past lives or anything. He just finds a person in front of him. He just naturally completely hates him, and because of some imagined slight, he sets out to burn him. But when this is going on, he has a deep regret within himself. He said, why am I doing this? What is going on? And Samraditya Kevali, the Jeev of Gunsen, explains to the audience there while he's giving his deshana that that particular thought is a turning point in Agni Sharma's future progress, that he has begun to regret the badness in him. And then he goes on to describe as to how his further elevation will happen. So in terms of my understanding of your question as to limited number of attempts, to an extent, what Mukula meant was that it is extremely important to make us aware that we should to make the best of what we've got. but whether we will never get it back, it only happens if our Jeev is a bhavya, meaning we can go up and down, but our sansar will never end because we are not destined to go to moksha. That is an abhavya Jeev. Or durbhavya Jeev, which will find very difficult to actually get to the stage of moksha, though it has the potential for going to moksha. But hopefully all of us are bhavya. And people ask, what is the definition of, or how do we know if we are bhavya or not? So what I've heard or what I've read is that if you ever worry, will I ever go to moksha or not, then you're bhavya. If you ever have gone as far as climb Mount Satrunjay and done a pilgrimage there, then you're bhavya. And there are a couple of things that abhavya Jeeves will never get there. Abhavya Jeev will never worry about moksha or not. But if there is a worry in our heart that all this sansar is really bad, am I ever going to be liberated from this? Then what I've read suggests that we are bhavya. So sooner or later we'll get there.
The other word that came up was charmavrat.
Charmavart Kal, yes. That is the last cycle of our journey. So Acharmavart is everything that's gone on in the past. Charmavart, even though it would be Anant Choisi in duration, is the last cycle, and spiritual progress begins to happen in the Charmavart Kal. So until then, there is no spiritual progress anyway. And it is quite likely that a lot of us have got to that stage. Bharatbhai, please correct me if I'm saying anything that is not correct. Bharatbhai, yes.
I don't think, there's anything that's said. This is not, that's, incorrect. But
Anything you want to add, Bharatbhai, to what
no,
I've
I think in answer to the question that we have very few bows in which we can attain moksha, or we have few chances. I think it all depends on what the level of, what is the level of purity, or what, gunastan one is in. I think it's said that opshamik samyaktva. I mean, when you climb the shapak sheni, you have opshamik samyaktva. You can only climb the shapak sheni only 4 times.
Yeah,
That is possible. That is, but that is at a very high spiritual level, because you are, climbing, you are on the gunastan from 8 gunastan onwards, 8, 9, 10, and 12. Or if you go from 10 to 11, that happens only 4 times. And the 5th time that will happen, you will attain moksha.
Yeah.
So I think that could have been sort of, it could have been sort of mixed up there.
Yeah.
Apart from that,
so Aupshamik Samyaktva is
the first time when you get samyaksha, samyaktva, that is opshamik, samyaktva. And then when you go from gunastan 8 onwards, and if you were to fall back, that will happen only 4 times.
Yeah.
And the 5th time you are bound to go to moksha.
Yeah, just to enlighten people, what Bharatbhai is talking about, Aupshamik is when the mithyatva monia karma gets suppressed. It's not destroyed. It gets suppressed and sort of sinks down like the dirt or the mud in still water. So if you got a lake or a pool where there's a lot of mud, but over a period of time when that water is not disturbed, all the mud sinks down and the water on the surface becomes purer and purer, and it looks like as if it is all completely clear, that is when all the mithyatomonia subsides and the soul suddenly begins to realize itself and achieves samyaktva. That is upsamik samyaktva, means upsam thayo. Upsam meaning it has settled down. The second type of samyaktva is kshay upsamik, means there are some mithyatomonia karmas that have got destroyed, some which are suppressed. So some have gone, some have been suppressed, and therefore you develop this same level of awareness that's called samyaktva. And kshaik samyaktva is when that darshanmonia karma, the mithyatomonia karma, has been got rid of completely, and that samyaktva will never be lost. In this day and age, Shaik Samyaktva does not happen. Barabar, Bharat?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's 9:30 now, almost past 9:30. Shall we end today? Hasmukh Bhai, I hope that has helped, but I will have a chat with...
No, it's really helping quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I'm beginning to understand the structure, the whole structure. And what's really helped is also, yes, he's not here today. Sandeep Bhai, to thank him, because like him talking a lot about physics, it kind of explains
It's good.
the things, like physics, it's going to the basic principles. Because I think what they're saying is that physics deals with the structure of the matter and the interaction between fundamental constituents of the observable universe.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously he's got the advantage because he's studied that, but him talking about that helped to put it into perspective quite a lot.
Good. Okay, I'm glad. Okay, let's end here today. See you all next week. Jinagna Virudh Kaipun Bolyo Hote, Subhiman Usinkaya Kiritasmichami Dukudam. If I have said anything that's against the teachings of our Tirthankar Paramatmas, Guru Bhagwans, and our Dharma, I ask for forgiveness. Sarva Mangala Mangalyam, Sarkalyan Karanam, Pradhanam, Sarvadharmanam, Jainam Jeti Sasanam. Thank you all very much. Keep well and carry on studying. And I hope what we've learned today raises some more questions that you will struggle with during the week, and you will engage in whatever you've learned. And like Hasmukh Bhai and Bharat Bhai, I know, spends a lot of time studying. A lot of us will spend more time finding out more and learning. Okay, thank you. And in terms of putting
Thank you.
and in terms of putting it into practice, we got somebody like Bijal Ben who makes great effort. And I know Jayashri Ben is here, who spends a lot of time studying as well and attending other classes. So we are fortunate that we got some great practitioners here as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Thank you,
Ajitbhai. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
I'll switch off.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
सकल विश्वना नाथ है प्रभु शरण आवियो आबाळता हरो अधिक बुद्धि तू शुद्ध आपजे प्रभु कृपा करी कष्ट कापजे नव कदी करी भक्ति भाव थी नव कथा सुनी निज कान थी स्मरण ना कर्યું તેમ તાહરું ના ભલું થશે કેમ માહરું. બહુ બહુ કુડા કર્મ મેં કીધા, ધન ધુતી કરી પાર કા લીધા. ગરીબ રંકને દુઃખ આપિયા, તરુ સુધર્મના ટેહ કાપિયા. અધિક લોભની લાલચે ફસી, ફિકર ના ધરી ચિત્તમાં કશી. કથન કઈ કુડા મેં મુખે કર્યા, વચન નીતિના સર્વ વિસર્યા. કરવડે કદી ધર્મ ના કર્યા, પણ અધર્મના કોથળા ભર્યા. જગતનાથ હું ડર્યો નહીં જરે, અનેક પાપ મેં સંસારમાં કર્યા. ચરણથી કદી ચાલી ના ગયો, પ્રભુ સુપંથમાં દૂર તો રહ્યો. ચરણ પાપને પંથ તો ધર્યો, દિલ વિશે નહીં તે થકી ડર્યું. છળ પ્રપંચને ધૂર્ત કામમાં, નવ કદી મૂકી ઓછપ હામમાં. અધમ જાતનો પ્રાણી હું ખરો, પ્રભુ તુંથી રહ્યો સર્વદા પરો. કર ગમે તને જે પ્રભુ હવે, અહીં બળું છું હું પાપ સંતાપમાં. દુઃખથી દૂરે નાથજી કરો, અરજ બાળની દિલમાં ધરો. સકળ વિશ્વના નાથ હે પ્રભુ, શરણે આવ્યો આ બાળ તાહરો. શરણે